So, December 1st last year, the day before, Hustler Fund.
Inside.
Live. People were just doing *254 hash, *254 hash, *254 hash. Initial limits of $500. People were at a limit of 300. I'm still at 500 1 year down the road. But yes, it's okay. We'll talk about it. We'll talk about it. We'll see. We'll see. But it's a year down the road. And Hustler Fund, as the president was telling the State of the Nation in Parliament, has been borrowed by many people. And billions of shillings has gone out there. We want to find out. So what's the impact of this thing? A year down the road. The acting CEO of the Hustler Fund is our guest this morning. Her name is Elizabeth Nkukuu. Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to Kenya's Biggest Conversation.
Thank you.
That's the hot seat of the Situation Room. Here you come in, unatuachia pesa ya Hustler.
Otherwise.
Tunamalisa wewe.
Tuko sawa.
But welcome you to the conversation. City has the day's proverb. Every week, City comes with proverbs from one African country. This week, he has decided it's the Republic of South Sudan.
Southern.
Okay. The Republic of?
Southern Sudan.
Okay. All right. You call it that.
Very good.
Okay. The president is?
His gentleman's name is Salva Kiir Mayardit.
He's the chairman of the East African Community.
Yes, he is. Now. Full.
Yes.
Right. Changing your mind is not being a liar.
Changing your mind is not being a liar. Elizabeth, what's your interpretation of this proverb?
Change is the only constant. If you don't change, then it means that you're headed in the wrong direction. New facts come, and you can't change your mind, and it is important. It's continuous learning.
Can you change promises?
Of course.
You can.
I don't know why. You don't hesitate. You can.
you can change the destination of the promise.
Destination of the promise. So, basi. A year down the road with Hustler Fund, give us those basic numbers. In the last 1 year, 7,500 billion shillings has been borrowed by 800 billion Kenyans, and a billion has been repaid. Let's start with that.
We start with that.
Yes, from the top.
From the top. So about 39.6 billion has been borrowed. 29 billion has been repaid by close to 19 million Kenyans. That's the actual people who have borrowed. We have 21.5 million Kenyans who have enrolled into the platform, meaning that we have about 2.5 million people who have enrolled but not borrowed.
Okay.
We have close to 8 million who are repeat customers. I borrowed once, it worked, I came back again, of which about 4 or 5 billion are actually borrowed more than 5 times. So
4 or 5 million, which is which?
It's about 5 million. 5 million
so
people.
5 million have borrowed more than 5 times.
More than 5 times.
And repaid. Okay.
1,000 people have borrowed more than 100 times.
What?
Yeah. Yes. So a clear indication that there is really need for that. There are people who are using the fund.
Okay.
Yes. 2 billion has been saved.
To be saved.
Yes.
Okay.
We can go to the Chama, maybe it's just top line as well.
Yes, it's important.
Groups initiated, 560. Completed groups, 52,000. And 23,000 have borrowed. Groups.
52,000 completed groups.
Completed groups.
What does that mean? Meaning
that I have worked, the entire team has been invited and accepted to be part of groups.
Okay.
Of which 38,000 of those groups have actually tradable certificates through Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises Authority. And the ones that have completed and borrowed, we have about 23,000.
How much has been borrowed by groups?
167 million.
Million.
Yes.
Okay.
167 million shillings.
Yes.
Okay. Now, these are good numbers.
A good place to start.
These are good numbers. It's a good place to start. How would we define the 19 million Kenyans who have borrowed, are you able to profile them and give us, like a basic profile based on how much they're borrowing, their borrowing habits and patterns and all?
Let me start by basic patterns. There are those who borrowed out of curiosity.
Yeah.
Is this thing for real? So those came in once, maybe didn't come back again. They repaid, maybe they didn't repay. They were just doing it out of curiosity. Is this something that is real? Then there are a second group of people who use it on need basis. It's not your go-to. Maybe I'm just somewhere, I need some cash, so I take that money. But there are people who use this money as like a need. I wake up in the morning, I'm programmed to first borrow Hustler Fund. The person who has borrowed 4.5 million borrows at least 3 to 4 times a day. So you can imagine that person is like a KPI. I have to borrow Hustler Fund today. So that is someone who is using this money, one, for business, and also two, they have used it. They're seeing it as an easier way to save. So those are the 3 kind of people I would say in that end. In terms of gender, the borrowing is almost like 50-50. You have 52 male and about 48% borrowed by female, and cuts across the entire country. We have representation across the country, with Nairobi's metropolis being the largest. The best payers are actually from Central, Rift Valley, but the largest is really Central, I would say. In terms of age, it cuts across again. We have 10% of our clients being over age of 60. Below the age of 35, we would have almost 70%, 70 to 80%. Okay. Yeah. So it's really a diverse sort of data set that we are currently looking at.
What's the highest amount that an individual has borrowed from Hustler Fund so far?
In a single transaction?
Yeah.
In a single transaction, it's about 10,000.
10,000 shillings?
Yes.
In a single day?
No, there are people who have limits of up to 10,000.
Okay.
Yes.
And
but in terms of the, let me just explain the 4.5 or the...
Yeah, because I was looking at that number. I was wondering where those, or the 741,000 that an individual bought a tuk-tuk with.
Actually, the individual did not buy the tuk-tuk with that money. Okay. So their limit is 1,600. They have borrowed 806 or 14 times. So each day they are borrowing 2 to 3 times, right? So that person, they are riding a tuk-tuk. So you pay them via M-Pesa. They borrow again because they are leasing a tuk-tuk from someone. So if you remember what the president said, can you Hustler Fund now come up with an asset financing product so that this person can be able to own this tuk-tuk? So the story is not that someone has gone to the star 254 hash and gotten 700.
Or sure seemed that way. Okay.
So it was what? It was 1,000 bob.
1,600.
600. That's their limit.
That's their limit.
But they've been borrowing and repaying, borrowing and repaying.
Yes.
So what do they use the money for?
They use the money for fueling the tuk-tuk.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
And now once paid, they repay back.
All right.
Yeah.
So currently, the highest limit that an individual has accessing the Hustler Fund is 10,000 shillings.
Yes.
All right. Now, this has been reached because of borrowing, repaying, and with the Hustler Fund, the more you borrow and repay, then that increases your limit. Is that the mechanic that you work with?
So let me start by explaining how initially the limits were arrived at. So there is a scoring mechanism that was done by our partners, that is the banks, largely KCB. So what you would do is look at your transaction, your M-Pesa transactions, your airtime usage, then they allocated you a limit. And Eric, you and I we have 500 shillings as our limit. Huh?
Wow.
Whereas there are people who actually got 6,000, 3,000. So initially, in the month of February, there was an enhancement. So it's some people who borrowed and repaid within that period of time got an enhanced limit. We are now looking at enhanced limit for the second time. So the person who has who got a limit of 6,000, it means that their transactions on M-Pesa were actually higher and they really needed that money. So the scoring ended up allocating them that amount of
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
on M-Pesa or on Fuliza?
On M-Pesa.
Okay.
On M-Pesa. Yeah. So what is going to happen going forward? Every 4 months, the limit will be enhanced, or will let me not say enhanced. They'll be reviewed, because if, for example, you had a 10,000 limit or a 6,000 limit, you become a defaulter. Why would we continue giving you the same? So it will be a complete rescoring every 4 months. Yeah.
Okay. And has it become an option for people to use in terms of quick access to easy credit, as opposed to the others that were existent before? Is it an option, or is it just something that people are still experiencing or experimenting with from what you've seen over time?
I'll go to the data statistics that was released by CBK on financial access. About 45% of people who borrowed, individuals who borrowed during the time that they were doing the survey, actually borrowed from the Hustler Fund. So it's one of the options that people are going to. So from where I sit, looking at the top borrowers, maybe the 1 million, it's really an option for them. It's something that they go to every time they need money. And it's also something that they wake up thinking about, this is where I will get my money or my capital. So I think it has had a significant impact in terms of changing the mindset of where people can get capital.
All right.
I have just done a new transaction. 5th time borrowing from the Hustler Fund. I'm still at 500. But who do I need to talk to?
Please do not talk to anyone. Borrow when as you're celebrating the 1 year anniversary, there will be changes in the limits, and then going up thereafter, it will be every 4 months. So
what do they base it on? So the first time they were looking at M-Pesa transactions.
Yes.
They clearly saw I have no money on M-Pesa. I don't make transactions. So they decided, well, I'm going to Pesa 500 bob. I borrowed, I repaid on time. Yes. Borrowed, repaid on time. My limit can't even go up by 50 bob.
So what we were doing, it took some time for us to be able to look at the data, relook at the data and do the rescoring. That's why after Feb, we have not done any more increases. So going forward, the president will really be explaining during the anniversary how the limit will change. The limits will change. However, the limits will really be reviewed after the anniversary. Okay. So if we can have this conversation next week, we shall see where you'll be.
Okay. Yeah. Every time I borrow this 500 bob, 25 bob is retained. And I'm told this one is my savings. Okay?
Yes.
Now, you've said 2 billion shillings has been saved and 39.6 billion shillings has been borrowed. This is not commensurate with the 2%.
The 5%?
Yeah, it's not.
What is this? Just calculate.
Surely. Because how much is 25 bob out of 500?
It's 5%.
Okay. Is this 5% of 40?
Yeah.
Where does the money go? Where is my money?
The money is being held.
5 times 5 times.
That's 125.
Your 125 shillings.
Yes.
So your 125 shillings is held in a separate account, custody account, that is invested for you.
Okay.
That money is available to you. Okay, let me take a step back. That's 25 shillings is divided into 2. There's a 30% that is short term, and there is a 70% that is long term. By long term, we do not want you to be old without money. So we are helping you save for your retirement. So the 30% will be accessible as a short term saving, and it's something that again will be one of the celebrations that we'll be having. The 70% is going to be invested on your behalf, and you'll get a return closer to treasury bill rate. The governance structure around it, again, is good governance, and it's mimicking the Retirement Benefits Authority provisions of having separate service providers really looking at this money.
Can you remind us what was the original source of these funds for the Hustler Fund was what?
The first money on the 1st of December 2022.
That was available on the 1st of December. Where was that money from?
It was government grant. It's a government seeding the fund.
Okay.
Yes. Okay.
All right. Now, the folks who've not paid, the numbers that you've given us, people who have not paid back their money. Okay, I don't know if that number came in there, but people who've not paid back. We saw the president having a conversation with somebody about, when he was going to pay his loan, whatever that was. What numbers are we looking at in terms of people who borrowed the money? I believe the initial amount was 500 and said, okay, we want to see if this thing works, and then never returned the money. What happens to them, or how is that working out?
So our repayment rate is about 72%, which by any means, especially on the digital platform, is a decent number. So now there are people, yes, who have borrowed and not repaid and maybe not willing to pay. So you have to take a step back and ask yourself, how do you help these people? Remember, government is not in the business of punishing. So you have to look at these individuals and break them into two first. The person who is borrowing and I won't pay because I will not pay. How do you deal with that person? So the starting point is your initial starting point is not to punish. It's to entice and show them, why should I pay? Why should I repay this amount of money? And so there are a couple of incentives that then are coming that way. So if I pay my money, I get an increased limit, so the day I really need this money, I can be able to start 254 hash and get the money. So that is one of the ways. So my credit limit is increased, my savings is increased, and as I repay also, the government is matching my savings. So if you remember the promise that the president gave when they launched the fund, for every 2 shillings you have saved in the fund, you get 1 shilling on your long-term fund. So that promise keeps people moving. So that is really the way to make people look at the benefits of repaying. And you nurture over time. But remember, we all have, let me now take a different perspective. We all have family members who are maybe addicted to drugs, for example. You don't take them straight to, you don't wake up one morning and say, these people are bad, so you're not part of my family. You have to walk them the journey. You are drinking too much, you have a talk, right? The second part, you take them to a therapist. The next time, you take them to rehab. And then finally, when they're not, you don't give up on people, but at some point you're like, okay, just sort yourself. So I feel like what is going to happen is a journey. The government is trying to rehabilitate, nurture up to a certain point where by now you have to pay maybe using other means, but we are not yet there. Okay. So the means are, let's really entice people. Let's see how people are going. Why should they pay?
Okay. Yeah. Let's look at the saving aspects a little bit. So this gentleman who's 741, I'm going to stick on that number, this 741, because this we're looking at over time the amount that he's actually borrowed, isn't it? And you said that it's borrowed his limits of 1,600 shillings, and he's done that a number of times, well over 100 times actually, isn't it? Yes. For it to come to that number over time. His savings then would be quite something, isn't it? Because with every transaction, he's put aside a 25, no, it's more than
5%.
5% of what he's borrowed. When can he access his savings? When can Eric get his grand total of 125,000?
Plus what the government has promised for every saving, that is US shillings.
So for every so his grand total of 200 shillings. Yeah. When can Eric get this to buy ice cream? When can you actually access this money?
Eric, please don't buy us ice cream with that money. We want you to save for your retirement.
It's for my retirement. Ice cream at old age.
Yeah, so there's the 30% that they will be able to access after the anniversary. Then the 70% is long term.
This one for Friday?
Yes.
So Friday we'll be told how we can get our money.
Yes.
It comes with interest.
Yes.
So now tell us.
Then the 70% is long term.
Okay.
And the long term is quote unquote pension. So we have a retirement age. However, you see, for the hustlers, they don't have a natural, like a curve whereby I retire at age X. So if, for example, I started saving at age 18 or borrowing at age 18, it means that maybe I'm running a business. I'll need this capital at some point to enhance my business. So there are mechanisms that we have put in place such that every 5 years you can be able to access a little bit of it just to boost your business. So those are the things that the president will be talking about in details on Thursday. And the government will also be talking about how do I match your money, because it's a promise that they gave. So people will be able to access that 30% soon, and going forward, there is also what is called voluntary. I had not talked about the voluntary. So you have the 30% as short term, but also I can decide that I want to invest with the Hustler Fund because I'm getting a return that is competitive. And that money is like your money market fund, accessible on demand.
You're a money person, Elizabeth. So let's just teach us about money.
Yes.
Okay. Where has this money been since last year?
It's in the it's in the banks invested in the treasury bills.
What vehicle is this? Is this a pension fund? So the 70%, is it in some form of pension that is regulated by the authority?
Mm-hmm.
And the other 30%, is it in a savings account? Is it in a SACCO? Is it regulated by SASRA? Is it regulated by the central bank? Give me the vehicles that are holding this. How much are we talking about? 2 billion shillings.
So the process of getting regulated is ongoing. So the 70% will be regulated by the Retirement Benefits Authority. The 30% will be under the Capital Markets Authority.
And so far, where has it been?
It is in the banking sector, in custody accounts.
What is a custody account?
Okay, so when you're investing, you have best practice demands that the money is not in a current account, because if they're in a current account, then there are challenges that come with it. If the bank went under, then your money would go under. So what happens is the banks issued a different license, whereby if you look at the banks that have custodial accounts, you will not see other people's money on that balance sheet. So let's say, for example, KCB. KCB has custody. They have their main balance sheets, but at the same time, they have something that you don't see, whereby they charge a fee business. It's not part of their money. They can't report on it. It is your account as a nominee that you open an account with them. So they'll trade and hold your money on your behalf, but not on their balance sheet.
Where can you see your savings today? If you wanted to look at, I'm going to use 125, sorry.
It's my money. Let's find out where exactly.
I want to press something and see balance savings equals Kenya shillings 125. Where do you see that today?
Start to 54 hash.
And you'll find it.
Yes. There's one of those options. Check your savings and
Savings,
that's what I'm saying. I know how much I have.
Okay.
Because I can check.
What Latiff will not see today is the crediting of the interest, which will be done by Thursday.
By Thursday.
Yes.
So it's not showing me everything. It's only showing me how much I've put in. It's not showing me what's in my account.
Yeah. It's a process.
And in the regulations that were passed by Parliament, was the Hustler Fund given a free way and a free reign on where it places this money?
No.
When you take in my savings, where are you supposed to have taken my savings?
Government securities.
Okay. Is this money only in government securities? The 2 billion shillings.
However, you need to, in fund management, let me just take a step back and deviate from credit.
Yes.
In fund management, there's what is called liquidity management. So you can, if I put money in a treasury bill and 100% of the portfolio in treasury bills, then Latiff comes for his 125 shillings, then I am in a credit crisis, a cash liquidity crisis. So you have to do portfolio management and do like 10-20% of your money has to be in liquid cash, so that when you come for your money, I'm not telling you a story. So that's so you'll have money in treasury bills, but also for liquidity management, you'll have 10-20% in liquid deposits and cash.
Elizabeth Nkukuu is the acting CEO of the Hustler Fund. She's our guest today. Hustler Fund is about to celebrate 1 year since it was first rolled out on the 30th of December last year. Where is that money? 39.6 billion shillings has been borrowed, 29 billion shillings has been repaid, 19 million Kenyans who have been borrowing from the Hustler Fund, and there's 1,000 people who have borrowed more than 100 times from the Hustler Fund in that 1 year. It's a lot of money. 2 billion shillings saved. For the people who have borrowed, they have saved 2 billion shillings. This is because they borrowed, it was deducted, and they were told to pay the full amount. So when the then Deputy President was campaigning on the road, he said, na tutaweka bilioni 50, na tutaweka mpango ya kusaidia hawa mahasla, jamaa mama mboga, jamaa ya boda boda, mtu ya kinyozi, waweze kupata pesa ya kufanya biashara. Now let's look at the impact. This 39.6 billion shillings that has been borrowed, right? Do you have cases where you can actually show us this is Mama Mboga and this is how, minus Hustler Fund, this was her life? With Hustler Fund, this is how life has changed. You have cases like that?
Yes, and most of them will actually be running on our socials, and we are running a documentary which I'll actually share with you, just especially looking at the top 100 and what they have been able to do. So there is someone who, a good example other than the one the president has talked about, Harris. Let me talk about someone the person who has borrowed 4.5 million. They actually stopped using that money. So they are clear.
What business do they run?
they run a shop next
So
to the university.
it's a retail shop.
It's a retail shop.
And they borrow to restock.
Yes.
They're basically using this for capital expense and working capital.
Working capital.
Okay.
Yes.
What's that impact? What are they doing before the Hustler Fund?
Before the Hustler Fund, they would go to the normal Shylocks, quote unquote, but maybe the tellers. And the way I'm looking at this is like, if you look at the financial access survey, it is actually showing that some of the costs having come down, some of the borrowings from some of the other digital platforms having come down, meaning that this person is actually being able to have a better income. So even if they had access to capital, they actually had, the capital was more expensive. So for every 1,000 shillings that you would borrow, maybe you're paying 100. So it's 10% per day. So for that person, if they borrow and pay within the day, they are not paying anything in the Hustler Fund. So you can actually see that 100 shillings, if they plowed it back to their business, it's something for someone who's borrowing 1,000 shillings. So at 100 shillings becomes something big. So the impact would be in the context of being able to grow your business by plowing it back. Again, you go a step further now and ask yourself, what is this doing to the person? So there is the business and also to the person.
Okay.
If you're able to look at the repeat customers, let's look at the numbers that we talked about of people who have borrowed five times and above. You're talking about 5 million people. Let's even take 25% of that, 1.2 or 2 million. Maybe they were not able to access capital. Now they are able to access capital. What have you done? You've actually been able to catalyze their businesses to a point whereby you are increasing. You may not be able to say today this has contributed to X% of GDP, but if you are able to have capital to 2 million people, I think that is a significant impact that the fund has had.
Practically,
Yes.
this one particular shopkeeper that you're telling us, they're in Nairobi.
No.
Where are they?
They was in Gishu.
So this shopkeeper in Wasingishu has been borrowing and has even gone to 4.5 million shillings in the last 1 year.
Yes.
Working capital, buy, restock, sell, repay. Buy, stock, sell, pay. Has their business expanded? Can you tell us that their business capitalization was this and now it's this? What is that impact on business directly with numbers?
I don't have the numbers.
Or outlets, branches of the shop, square meters of the shop. What is it?
We haven't carried that analysis to say that this is how it has expanded, just because also one of the things that we realize, the people that we are targeting, the numbers are not that corporate, whereby we are saying this is how my turnover has increased, like that, but you can actually see maybe the quality of the stock that they have put into the business. And remember also, even if you look at this amount of money they are borrowing on a day-to-day basis, it's not like they're going to get like 10 or 20,000 all at once. However, with the access now, that is going to be a significant game changer, because this person was able to access, was maybe accessing 1,000. Let's even say they were accessing 6,000 for argument's sake. Now they are able to access on one day more than 50,000 from their savings. So you can imagine what that will do to their business or even to their life. So if you look at this fund, not only are you looking at the credit side, you're also looking at what is the saving going to do for them. So this particular person has saved 225,000 shillings. They are going to be able to access 30% of that. So you can imagine what that means for them.
Actually,
At a go.
you see, the benefit I see from this, the way it's structured, it forces one to have fiduciary discipline. And within that discipline, that's where you realize the benefits. You borrow, you pay within a day, no interest, isn't it?
Yes.
So it's what Kenyans call free money, though there's nothing of that sort, okay? But if you keep this up and a portion of it is still saved, so you're getting to do your business, you're getting to repay it, you're getting to save. It's, if you look at just the thinking behind it, it is a good thing.
And maybe just to continue on that note, is that the celebration, people will have access. If you are in good standing, the economy will get 700 million that they can access. 30% of
the 2 billion.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's something, even in terms of circulation of money.
Okay. Why is there a celebration for this? Why is there a celebration?
Why is there celebration? Because there's so much to celebrate about and re-communicate the vision. Because you see, there has been also a lot of maybe news about is the fund doing, how is the fund doing. I think telling the success stories is important, and for people to actually see that, you know what, this noble idea, this is what it has been able to do. So 1 is celebration, 2 is recommunication, and 3 is actually just the president talking about the key enhancements that are coming with the fund.
Actually, it answers the question that we're always asking. Why doesn't the government talk about the things it's actually doing? I mean, they're doing these things, they never tell anybody, is it successful, is it not? But if indeed there will be people giving testimonies, because that's what they're called, testimonials, that'll even be better. Because these are live people, these are Kenyans who can actually tell their story.
Yes.
I borrowed, then borrowed again, and then borrowed some, and this is where I am. But even when we hear those stories, we still will be asking questions. One question would be, is it really all from the fund, or did you have other sources of income? Do you have other sources of money? Do you have other sources of borrowing?
And that's the analysis that I'm looking for. You know, if this person, for example, was getting money from the other mobile lending apps, or they were getting money from the local Shylock, or their SACCO, have they reduced that to go into Hustler Fund, or have they increased just their sources of borrowing to add Hustler Fund onto it? And then can we actually look and say there's been impact on this person's business? Because that is the whole idea. The whole idea is kusaidia mama mboga so that then they're able to get better. If they're using this for working capital, are we sure that they're using this for working capital? Just because I sell mboga does not mean that every money that I borrow, I'm putting it into my business.
True, and it might be difficult to drill it down. It's something that we have debated about. How do we tell that for sure this money goes to... We can trace that money, but remember, by the time I'm getting money from the Hustler Fund, I'm also getting money from Eric, who is my son. So it is very difficult to drill it, to push it down all the way. However, there are statistical ways maybe to show. So if I look at the financial access report, it actually shows the decline in other mobiles or other source of capital to Hustler Fund. But you see, the aim of the Hustler Fund is not to compete with the private sector. It is to make sure that at least someone sees hope and can be able to access credit in a cheaper way. So, and again, so that is what the government is trying to do, not to replace the private sector player. It is actually to make sure that this person has a story that the financial institution can bank. So if, for example, the tuk-tuk person, if they walked into the bank, they might not be able to get money. But out of all this, I have been able to, if they go and show in their M-Pesa statements, for example, I've been able to transact like this. I think the banks are willing to take. And it's a conversation that we're actually having with their banking partners. How can they take these people? They're actually the ones who are pushing, like, how can we bank or how can we lend to these people? So you see, that is what the government is trying to do, to catalyze and to make sure that these people are clean. There is a record that someone can use for them to be able to access credit.
Okay. At the time of the institution of the fund, there was no board, there was no mechanism that then...
There was no CEO.
There was no CEO. There was nothing that gave this fund any kind of life, right? And there were many questions. It's unconstitutional because you don't have, and then who gives powers? You know, it was a whole, long story. So now, in your position and as acting CEO, looking at then the constitution of a board, etc., under which department then does the operations of the fund fall under, and then how is it funded?
Okay, so yes, when it started, everything moved really fast, and one of the starting points is, remember, you cannot start or cannot disburse public funds without a framework. So a framework was put in place. The regulations are anchored on the Public Financial Management Act. So we have regulations that set up the institutions, set up at the secretariat, set up a board. So we currently have a board, which was inaugurated in March. So in between there, the State Department was actually running with the fund. Now we have the board, which makes most of the decisions and then passes it on to the executive for adoption. So that is how we are currently running. How is it funded? It's funded through the exchequer. So there are two ways. There is what is called the A&A. We are charging interest. So part of that is actually used to pay for costs. Remember, the service providers are not doing this for free. They have at least a cost to pay. So we get the interest. That is what is used to pay. Then also part of it goes to the secretariat. And in case there are any deficiencies, then we get the exchequer to support. Yeah.
Will that change in the near future, whereby you're looking at having a semi-autonomous or autonomous body that deals with it, because it's almost like a banking or financial institution, as it were. But then, of course, you cannot have it void. You cannot have its operation void then of any kind of state cover.
Yes.
So will it then be semi-autonomous at some point?
Actually, the way
from
it's
all
set up,
indications,
the way it's set up is actually semi-autonomous. It's just that now it was settling. It was really an issue of settling and setting up all the structures in place. So the process of setting up the structures are actually almost at the tail end, so that we have everything. And when you have an oversight board, then that helps in terms of moving to that direction. Yeah.
Questions will always emerge about governance and rule of law. So the first thing that started before the first shilling of the Hustler Fund was disbursed was the publication and adoption of those regulations of the PFM Act.
Yes.
But those regulations stipulate that this fund shall be run by a board and a secretariat. 3 months they ran without a board. We have an acting CEO 1 year down the road. Okay? As we are talking, in terms of these 2 billion shillings that's been saved, it is not under oversight of the regulator for pensions or the regulator for capital markets. Still questions about why is the law catching up with the fund? Why can't the law function the fund function within the law?
I think if you remember, Eric, everything is a journey. And innovation actually catches it. At times, regulations is slower than innovation. Let's go to M-Pesa. There were a lot of conversations before M-Pesa really was adopted. Look at where we are today. So this is the same thing. The product is an innovative initiative that is moving fast. So the thing is, how are we making sure that the public interest is actually protected? There is no money that is going to get lost. So there is the framework within which the fund operates. You have the private sector who are regulated. So we can actually not say that the fund is not regulated. There is the CBK, which is overseeing the banks. And remember, all the money has to be lent through the banking structures. So it is not a fund lending. We have to lend it through the right regulations. If you look at the investments today, again, it is within the purview of CBK and the RBA. So you can actually, the custodians are actually regulated. So you can. The only thing is, how do we make sure that we knitted in and know what exactly we need? So let's say, for example, you're talking about the savings. There is a very specific way that the regulator of pension has actually set up the structures. However, does that really speak to what we want? So that is why at times it is good to look at the product as it grows, so that you are able to understand what specific things do you need within the law for you to be able to comply. So I just feel it's just innovation really. It's just an issue of iteration and making sure that you are protecting the funds as much as possible. We have the Office of the Auditor General looking at this. We have the Treasury. You cannot get a single shilling from Treasury unless they are comfortable in terms of how it's going to be run. There is a lot of reporting back and forth. So what I look at is, yes, governance is already in place, and it can get better, and it is getting better for us to get into where we need to be.
You know, the example you give of Safaricom is a very appropriate one. But remember also, Safaricom didn't have an equivalent. And so when you say it ran ahead of regulations, it did. Money, the borrowing, the savings exists within an environment where we already have institutions that do precisely that. And that's why we have the governance structures. You see, the question that we're raising is, yes, the good that the fund is doing or it was purposed to do, we understand. Perfectly all right.
Yeah.
The problem is that when it's public funds and not private funds, I'm not saying one is more important than the other. I'm simply saying public funds is precisely that, it's public funds. One would have expected that perhaps a little waiting time so that the things you're saying are put in place. You see, what that does is, when these questions are raised, there's a ready answer. The work in progress is understandable. Sometimes you can say, some of these problems, if you actually wait for the regulations, you'll never get this thing started. That we also understand. But then again, it is within a certain ecosystem where regulations exist, and the sort of business we're talking about already exists. We understand it. It's not something absolutely new. It's just that the government is doing it in the manner it's doing it, and that is called new. But the activity therein,
the concept is regulated. The concept of pension is regulated, and there's a regulator in place.
Yes.
Right?
the function of lending
With
is
actually
regulated.
up-to-date laws and regulations on how to govern pension funds. Okay? One of those things is you need to be registered with RBA. And then now you start hiring those other three players within the sector. Hustler Fund is not registered with RBA, is it?
It's the process of getting registered.
You see, so 1 year it has not been registered. Higher. In the capital markets, you are you're operating a regulated fund within the capital markets. Should you be registered with the CMA?
And that is what you see. What is happening? Maybe just to take back a step back.
Okay.
So the way we're operating with regulated entities. Okay. So the money right now is with KCB and family, who are regulated. So in terms of regulations and in terms of public funds, they're actually within the regulatory framework.
Okay.
What we are saying is we would like to move a step further. So what we are doing is actually a better to improve. But as we speak today in terms of public funds, fully within the purview of regulations and in line with what needs to be done.
I want to ask you a question about these 10 billion shillings.
Yeah.
I've borrowed again just now. Well, no, the ones that I borrowed this morning. Okay. Not again.
I was going to say that was quick.
You know, I'm trying to accumulate this money before
Get to 10.
Before
Get to 10
Thursday.
times.
Before Thursday. Then I can get more money. You're required to pay within 14 days.
Yes.
After 14 days, what happens?
After 14 days, you'll be reminded. So there'll be normal reminders of kindly pay your money. Then after that, at that point, you're paying an interest rate of 8%.
Okay.
So after 14 days, your interest rate increases to 9.5.
Okay.
Then after that, now we continue reminding you up to day 90. Yeah. Then after that, is the conversation we were having about how then, if you haven't paid.
So what do you categorize me at that point? After on the 15th day, what do you call me? A defaulter?
Not as a defaulter. We actually, what we define as defaulters is anyone who has been having the money more than 35 days. Because we were just like gracious. We're like 14 days, maybe things didn't happen. We extend to you 2 weeks. So after 35 days, that is when they confirm.
How much money do we have that's gone beyond 35 days?
I don't have that number off my mind, but I can. It's something that we can share. But it's not. If you look at the 72% repayment rate, it remains a good number.
So this what does 18% mean?
There.
72%
repayment rate.
And the other?
So those are the ones that we are still looking at. How are we able to collect that money?
So that's a default.
We could say that.
Non-performing loan.
We could say that, yes.
28%. That's very high, isn't it?
It's not that high compared to other digital. If you look at the other digital platforms, yeah.
But why it's still high? We're talking of over a quarter of the 40 billion shillings that's been borrowed is laying somewhere where you're not sure whether this person will ever repay, you're not sure what to do with them, you're not sure this and the other. It's plus 10 billion shillings of public funds that are out there with people that you've lent that you don't know what to do with.
No, let me take a step back. You see that 39 billion, the money that has been put into the fund is 12 billion.
Okay.
It's 12 billion. So you're talking about maybe 2 billion or so.
Okay.
Thereabouts. And I don't think we can say at this point that we don't know what to do with them. What we are saying is let's first nudge them. And the nudging is let's show you what is it that you can do to repay. And the way we are doing that is making sure that we are showing you why are others paying and what have they been able to do with this. When that phase is over, then we shall look at what is the next course of action. Because remember, Latiff, we are using your ID as the unique identifier, not your mobile number. Yeah. So that's why you can't borrow on 2 SIM cards. So we have your details. So at the right time, when we really have nudged you, we shall look at what are the other ways to recover. But I think first of all is to extend a lot of grace to make, because there are those people maybe genuinely they borrowed and can't pay. So how can you help these people? So it's an analysis that we are going to take and say, okay, fine, this Latiff can pay but won't pay because I won't pay because it's government money. That is a different person from someone like, okay, if I had the money, I would pay. So these people, you have to treat them very differently. And you cannot get to a solution unless you do the analytics behind it and actually say, okay, fine, I won't pay because I won't pay because I won't pay, and because I have money on M-Pesa and I won't pay. You guess, that's the kind of analysis. This person is very different from someone who really needs support. How do we support this person? And one of the things that we are going to really focus on is training, financial literacy, because these people, at times, the planning of their money is also a problem. So one of the key mandates of the fund is actually capacity building on the financial literacy side. So that some people don't even understand when someone tells you, I'm giving you 1,000, you're paying me 1,100 in the evening, what that means. So we are not only giving money, but we are also going to train and teach people things to do with money.
Okay. Can you opt out, and when can you opt out? Before, the option was not there. Is it there now?
No.
You can't opt out?
Not yet. Not yet. No,
what is to opt out?
You're not doing again now. Give me my savings, return my money, let's keep it moving.
You'll only get access to what, 30%?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you'll remain in the fund because you have your money.
The rest of the money must stay.
Must stay for now until you're 60.
Okay.
For now.
CT has been borrowing. He's over 60. So where is his pension?
She's going to tell me to go to NSS.
Mine is an alternative. Mine is an addition, because remember, it's not an alternative.
But you will not access that money until you're 60.
But even when you're 60, remember I said we have more than 10% of people are over the age of 60.
Yeah.
So at that particular point, you cannot be able to access. All your money will be classified as short term.
As savings.
Yeah.
CT, wacha tuweke na pesa yako. Elizabeth Nkukuu is the acting CEO of the Hustler Fund. She's been our guest.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.